Welcome back, everybody. It's been around 5 months since I've posted a video, and right now I have some content to share. So let's talk about Norway chess tournament that's happening in Norway, and it's one of the most famous tournaments that happens in chess every year, and probably only the top 10 or the top greatest grandmasters at that time will be participating in the event. So in both open and women's category. So this time we have six players. The world number one Magnus Carlson, number two Hikaru Nakamura, number three Gukesh, and followed by Fabiano Caruana, Arjun Irigesi, and Wei. All of them in the top 10. And in the women's category, we mainly have the current world champion of women's as well, Ju Wenju. So yesterday we had this very shocking and the most anticipated match of this tournament, where the current world champion meets against one of the greatest or the greatest player of chess, Magnus Carlsen. So let us dive deep into the game and see how the game went and things turned across the board. Yeah. So the game opens with e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, the classic king's opening, king's opening variation, knight variation. So right now, the options that Gukesh has with the white pieces is either to move the pawn up to d4 or the bishop to d3 or d4 or b5. And out of all these options, Gukesh chose for bishop b5. And if you see, this kind of opening is called as the Rui Lopez opening, and it is Magnus's favorite opening, is what he told in one of the interviews. So Gukesh plays this opening against Magnus, and Magnus continues the game with knight f6. So this kind of defensive move is called as Berlin defense, and the game continues forward with this with proper non-theory. So as you can see now, Gukesh plays the move c3. The reason for this move is to prevent the knight to come here or the bishop to come here to take the center. So now black cannot capture the center for a few moments. The game continues, all equal, and yeah, here is when Gukesh makes his first small inaccuracy, small mistake, which doesn't do much. He went with queen c2. Rather, the engine says the right move was knight d2, which at the moment even I am not able to understand the proper reason why. Probably the reason why he went queen c2 is to protect the bishop, if I'm not wrong. It's fine, but the game continues. Yeah, here is the first, should I say, big mistake or a mistake that Gukesh commits is what he's trying to do is pretty simple. What I understand is he's trying to align the queen and the rook together so that he can take this pawn and queen takes and the rook takes and the game continues equally. But apparently, what he misses is this move where and Magnus finds this amazing move where he moves the bishop to d3. Now Gukesh cannot take this bishop because Magnus will be taking the rook again, and then Magnus will be winning. So after which, okay, right now Gukesh plays this desired move knight d2, which we were talking earlier. But the problem is he's realized his mistake now, but it's too late because now the problem is Magnus's this pawn, the hedge pawn, is under beast mode. He starts to attack. He pushes that pawn forward. It's a great move. Then Gukesh thinks that he can exchange and he goes for the exchange. Magnus takes back. Gukesh takes back, but that doesn't do much because again this pawn keeps attacking forward. Now Gukesh has to retreat this knight, but there isn't any place he can go to. If he goes here, he takes. If he goes here, he takes. If he goes here, he takes. So apparently, so when Okay, when tries to take the knight, Gukesh says, "No, I will take your rook." So when Gukesh says, "I'll take your rook," Magnus says, "No, I'll protect my rook with another rook." So now Gukesh makes another mistake of retreating his rook, but rather what he has to do is to exchange itself. So this is the third mistake which Gukesh does, and that nearly actually ends the game. But let's see what happens. Now you can see from this point onwards, Magnus's king is very free to come forward. Let's see. Forward, forward, forward. Keeps on going. Knight, both the knights exchanged. Yeah. Look at from here, the king keeps marching forward. Front. He gives a check forward, check forward. Again check, moves, again check, blocks. So you can see from here the king moves across all these diagonals and reaches here. Almost clears the path for the king for the entire game for Magnus. Now Magnus decides to exchange the rooks. He exchanges it, and see now we have reached an end game where you have pawns, both the knights and both the rooks. And in case if you know about certain histories, Magnus is also known as the master of endgames. So usually if you reach an endgame, it's probably either draw or winning for Magnus. Magnus won't lose. So that's situation here. But you can see both the time, just like Gukesh, what happened in Gukesh's World Championship, where the time was low for the opponent. Here also, Magnus faces a critical time issue. The game continues with the same nearly equal position, and this is where the game turns upside down. So far, it was winning for Magnus Carlson and losing for Gukesh, but now things turn upside down. Okay, let me tell you what is the correct move here. What Gukesh tries to do is now Magnus is attacking his knight, so he has to move the knight somewhere. He moves it here such that he can take this pawn. So apparently the right move for Magnus right now is to protect this pawn with this rook. But and you see after if Magnus does this, it is hard for Gukesh to find the move forward, because the right move is to sack this knight, and then and finding this move would have been very difficult. Another method for Magnus was, sorry, yeah, and once he does this, Magnus can do this knight move over here, sacking his knight. And how would this continue? Gukesh will be taking his knight, Magnus will be taking his rook, and Gukesh has to protect his knight, because wherever else he goes, he's losing. So this is the only okay move that he can play, and he has to move forward. This is how the game should have continued. But apparently, what Magnus had done was was rather than protecting his pawn, he went for this knight to move much early. So probably, I think from what I understand, what I think might have been gone wrong with the thinking of Magnus is that he might be thinking of giving a check to the king, as well as opening up this rook over this rook so he can take it later. But what he missed was that if he does this move, Gukesh can just take with his rook. He also takes the knight and also escapes from this rook. So now the game continues. The king cannot move here or here, because he will be taking the rook. So he has to take sorry, Magnus has to take the rook, and he takes back the rook and he leads with the knight. So the game continues out of desperation for Magnus, where everything turned upside down, and Yeah, that's it. Right now, Magnus bangs the table aloud and shakes his hand with Gukesh, telling he's done. So this was one of the anticipated match from everybody, the world champion versus the world's greatest. And just like the world championship last match which we saw between Gukesh and Dinglirin, where when the bar went up at a time like this, when the bar went strategically up and everybody was shocked, the same situation was in this game as well, when the entire, at least at that game, it was always a draw and it went down. But here, it was always winning for Magnus, and this last minute time pressure made him make this mistake, and the bar went up, and everybody is surprised and shocked of what just happened. So thanks to my friend Sarmadi as well for reminding me that I have a YouTube channel, and right now the match has been done such that I can make content out of it. So thank you, and if you guys have any ideas or any kind of videos that I can make in future, please do share in the comment box. Thank you.